In this series of conversation starters, we're thinking about what forms us and how we can be involved in forming the world around us. And at the start of this one, we're going to go right back to the start. At the start of the Bible, there's this poem. It's a story. It's an attempt by the ancients to explain how everything that they saw around them, the trees, the mountains, the sunset, the stars, the streams, how that got there, who put it there, who put each other there. And on page 1 of the Bible, there's this poem about a God who creates. And over the course of church history, we've all gone down a whole load of rabbit holes that really were never intended by the writers for us to go down. For this beautiful poem was meant to illustrate some things that were unique about us and which were unique about God. All around them, other creation stories were being told. And in these creation stories, you maybe remember studying some of them at school, like the Romans or the Greeks, but there are many more. All these creation stories happen, and in many of these creation stories, there's a war between multiple gods. There's creation out of hate or lust or spite or conflict. But in this creation story, well, there's one God. And the spark that causes this God to create is not hate or conflict or spite or desire to get one up on anybody else. Well, it's love. And the way this God creates is with a word. It's this powerful moment, and it gets repeated 7 times throughout the story, throughout the poem. God said, and then God says something. And then that thing happens. God says, let there be light, and light is there. God says, let there be earth and wind and sky and sea, and those things emerge. And then later on in the poem, we're told that God builds, designs, creates humans, you and I, in God's likeness, to be like God, to have the characteristics of God. So, here's a truth revealed on page 1 of the Bible. Words create worlds. Say it another way, phrases form. You know this to be true. You know this to be true in a really simple way when each evening at some point in the evening, and it could be 5 o'clock for the early birds, it could be 7 o'clock for those who are a little bit later, it's 10 o'clock for those of us who commute. At some point, somebody will say, it's dinner time. And saying those words make that time dinner time. It creates a new reality around you. If there's other people in your house, they'll come and they'll settle down and they'll eat, whether it's a dinner party or a family meal or whatever. It's dinner time. And you declare this to be true, and then it is true. Words create worlds. St. Mark's, this little village, our little church, well, that was created with some words. They were words that I stuck on a website and on a Facebook page, and nobody read any of them. And then we started to meet people one at a time, and I described this community that would be in the future. But at the moment, all there were words, and most of them were empty. But the words created our village, and it's now a thing, and it's now a thing that we care passionately about and we feel like we belong to deeply. And many of us have got deep friendships and relationships formed, and it all began with a word. Maybe there was a word that was uttered between you and some friends that have sparked a lifelong commitment to each other. Maybe there was a moment where you walked across a room and asked somebody out, and that was the word that began a whole new world. You know the power of words. There are people who have spoken into my life and have said things that I didn't recognize yet to be true. There's a truth that I'm probably in this role largely thanks to a guy called Chris Barker, who when I was 15 rang me up on the home phone line one day, because we didn't have a mobile. Who had them? They hadn't been invented yet. And he rang me up and he says, we've got a planning meeting tonight, we've got a leadership meeting tonight, I'm going to pick you up and I'd like you to come. And I was like, great, sounds great, but why? And he said, because I see a leader in you and I'd like to help you develop that. I hadn't seen that. I hadn't thought about that. I wasn't trying to get into that leadership group. I didn't know I had creativity or ideas or the ability to speak in front of people, but somebody else saw it in me and said it. Maybe you've had somebody that has said something to you and it's called out of you, or it's encouraged something in you to emerge, or it's concreted some good inside you. And because of what they spoke to you, that's formed you in a profound way. Their words created a world in you and around you. Their phrases have formed you. And we know the inverse to be true. Many of us will know the pain of having a word or a phrase spoken to us or over us or about us. Either something that was just said once but stung deeply, maybe something that was said 1,000 times and has just, like a drip, drip, drip on top of a stone, has just eroded something away from your soul. Maybe it was something that was said directly to your face, maybe it was something you heard behind the back, you weren't ever supposed to hear it. But it was a word that created in you doubt or discouragement or pain or conflict. Words create worlds. We know this to be true in our own bubbles, in our own minds and our own spirits. We see this to be true around us. We see it in the arena of politics, where there are some skilled orators who can say things and that moves the needle. It changes the dial. It creates a new possibility. That's done to its best when somebody like David Attenborough stands up at COP26 and leads the charge on something, or Greta says something and everybody gets behind her and says, yes, I want to build a world that's formed by those words. Of course, you see it on the inverse, where you see somebody like Trump or Hitler and they say something that sparks hatred and people wonder why a few months down the line the world that they live in has completely changed. It was because of words further upstream. Words create worlds. Phrases form. It's true on page 1 of the Bible, and it's true of the world around us. And so here's our question to take into our car shares that we're traveling through life with together. The people that we trust, that we journey alongside. Are you aware of the people that spoke great words into your life? Do you know them? Can you reflect on them? Have you ever told them? Have you ever thanked them? Have you ever considered how your life was created and formed because of those words? Maybe if you are walking through life with people you trust, then you might find a safe space to sit down and share openly some words that have stung, some criticism which has hurt, some things which have caused darkness within you. Maybe together you could pray for healing and restoration and for light to flood into those spaces and to speak new words to each other. Several of the Bible writers pick this up and they understand that throughout our lives there's going to be things which are spoken to us, over us, about us, that speak into our lives and create an internal world and an external world that are not good. And so they encourage the people of the village, the people of Jesus, the people of the way, they encourage them to speak to each other graciously, encourage one another, love one another, build one another up with words and with spiritual songs if you need to. I don't know if we still do that, but it's in the Bible, so I don't know. If you feel like singing a song to somebody, go for it. What's the worst that could happen? Of course, there's the invitation throughout this whole series to think not only about how we are formed, but to accept the invitation to form others around us well. To use our words to speak into reality new worlds. Something more profound than it being dinner time. Maybe it being dinner time for many hungry children. Can our words challenge and provoke and have a prophetic edge which says to injustice and systems of authority that are abusive, no, enough, stop? Can our words create a world where justice and righteousness flows like an unstoppable river? Can our words, my words, just encourage somebody today? Can they build somebody up? Can somebody else experience me today as kind and as encouraging and as healthy And may their world be different because of the words that I speak into it. Here's all the challenges for our phrases that form and our words that create new worlds. As you chat about this in your car share, as you chat about this with the people that you love and that you trust, may you hear the affirmation of the Lord who loves you. May you know blessing deep in your soul. May you be encouraged to continue because you're doing great.